Okay, in this one, we are going to look some more at functions and how they are defined, um, and what we call return values. So, if you remember from a previous video, we talked about alert and how you could send a message to the user using alert. And like so, and you can press OK. But we also talked about setting a variable equal to something like confirm or prompt, and in this case, if we do that, we can actually get at what the user responds from this dialog box that pops up. So if I run it, I get a pop-up. I can type kitty, and then I can log that, which is stored in this variable, which is what the user responds to with prompt. So I set the variable equal to, I initialized it, so I declared it, and then I assigned it a value while I declared it. So that means altogether this is called initializing. I set the variable, I assigned it a value, which was the user's response to the prompt. So when I say x is, set x equal to this is a function now. What the function does, the function will do something, and when it completes, it'll have a result that it returns. So in this case, it returns whatever the user types, which means in its place will go kitty, the string kitty, and that gets logged into the memory with the name x. And so when I call upon x later, it has the stored value of kitty. That is called a return value. So we can do that ourselves. So I'll declare the variable, I'll define a function. I'll call this square that, kind of like how we had before. Maybe this time I'll call it cube that. And it's going to take a value as an argument. And then I'm going to do a block of code. I don't know why that looks extra indented, but I don't think it matters. And in that block of code, I want to calculate. Before we did something like this, val times val times val for the cube. This time I'm going to say differently. I'm going to get rid of the logging of this, and instead I'm going to say return the product of 3 of these multiplied together. So this return value means that now when I type cube that on, let's say, 10, it will calculate the cube of 10, and the cube of 10 will go where the function call is in the code. So I should get 1,000 here. So if I run it, I do. So this is called a return value, and it's pretty useful. So we could say, let's see, we'll get something from the user. I could put I'll say cube that, and then in here I'll put a prompt. Let's see if this works. Pick a number, any number. And so inside of cube that, I have a prompt. Prompt will return a number, and then cube that will calculate that, and that is what finally appears inside of the console.log. Pick a number, 5. That 5 stands in for this after I enter it. Cube that then executes upon 5, and that returns a 125, which then goes into the log function. So there's a kind of nested composition of functions here that I'm doing. And you can use these return values, so when you run cube that, in its place will come this value. So I could say, instead of that, let's try it another slightly different way. I'm going to say var user data equals prompt, pick a number. Somebody can pick a number. Then we can do something with that, like cube it. Cube that, user data, and then you can obviously add things to that. So let's see, we will say, trying to think of what else we can do. We'll say var output equals cube that plus 10, and then we'll log the output. So whatever the user does, we'll cube that number and then we'll add 10 to it. So let's try that. Pick a number, 3. Cube of 3 should be 27. So I should get 37, which is 10 more. So that works nicely. So this is called return value. One thing to know about the return value is that it breaks the function. So if I say, let's say I start the function at 10, and then I'm going to say 10 plus plus, so that will make it 11. And then I do x plus plus again, that'll make it 12. And then let's say I don't need to input a value, so let's get rid of the value. And then I'm going to say return x, so I should get 12. So let's try that. I'm going to, let's see, clean this up. So set x equal to 10. If I run cube that, it will increase 10 by 1 2 times. And then it will replace, to call a function you gotta put parentheses, even if it has no argument. To show that it's a function you need parentheses here. So that should return 12 in here, and that should get logged. And there we go. Now watch this. Instead of putting the x plus plus there, if I put it after, one of them goes after the return, what happens? Well, if I run it, you'll see that it increases it by 1, returns the value at that point, so I get 11, and that's what ends up getting logged. This one, we don't get to that one in time. Does that one even go? Like, does that even run? Well, let's not just log that, let's also log what x's value is after we run it. So what we're testing here is that it starts at 10, I run cube that, it increases it by 1, it spits out an 11, that 11 gets logged, and does this even run? Does it ever set x to 12? Well, we'll find out because we'll check x after we run cube that. So what happens? It says 11 twice. So it spits out 11 2 times in a row. Instead of showing you 2 lines with 11, this console is collapsing them into 1 and showing you a 2. So you know you got that output twice. So this doesn't even run. This never happens. So when you have a return, you will go through them line by line, but a return breaks out of that cycle. So you do not do anything that comes after that. This code will never get run. So that's something to know about return values. Now that's how a function can spit out a value, can do a return value. You could do something like this. So we could say raise. Let's make a function called raise. And I'm going to say this. It's like an exponent. Base exponent. So you're going to take two arguments here, and it's going to return, and then here's the built-in thing that you can use to raise things to a power. It's math.pow for JavaScript, and I'll just put the base and the exponent here, and that's what's going to get returned. So now I can just say, in my log, I could say raise 10 to the third power. That should give me 1,000. So let's try that. And there we go. I raised 10 to the third power. So I got my return value. Now, what you can do is you can so that's how return value works. There are other things that break out of the cycle. So one of them is called break. So I'll just mention that. If I run break, it breaks out of the cycle. It's kind of like return because it breaks out of the cycle, except it doesn't return the value. So in this case, this will never get run because break happens first. I break out of this function call. It executes until it sees break and then it stops. And then nothing ever gets returned. So when I say console.log and I run this, nothing gets returned. So there's going to be nothing here. So when I say console.log, it's going to have an issue. So let's see what happens. Unlabeled break must be inside of a loop. Oh, I didn't realize that you have to be inside of a loop. So yeah, I guess don't use that in a regular function call. In a couple videos from now, we'll get to loops, and I'll show you how those work there. There's also another one that works kind of like that called continue, which I imagine also needs to be inside of a loop. But they kind of work like return in that they break out of your sequence of instructions. So that's what we would call function calls. I'm sorry, return values. Return values of a function.